This is the darkest series you will ever watch on marriage. Within the next minutes, you will see the institution of marriage not as a sacred union, but as the most sophisticated and socially sanctioned system ever designed to leech the lifeblood of male genius. It transmutes a man's boundless potential into the dead weight of domestic compliance, ensuring his energy is consumed in service to duty rather than creation. If you have ever wondered why so many men, poets, scientists, visionaries, leaders seem to burn out, to fade into mediocrity after marriage, the answer is not coincidence. It is by design. The gears of marriage are oiled not with love but with surrender, with sacrifice of a man's higher self in exchange for an endless cycle of trivial obligations that consume his time, silence his genius, and bury his spark. Kafka, the man whose pen tore open the veil of modern alienation, lived under the shadow of marriage. He was engaged multiple times but never married. He saw with unbearable clarity what marriage does to a man. In his diaries, he confessed that marriage is the impossibility of writing, the suffocation of genius, the burial ground of freedom. For Kafka, to marry was not to love, but to submit to annihilation of spirit. And yet society brands this annihilation as maturity, as responsibility, as the path to being a real man. What is sold as growth is in fact decay. The man who could have written, discovered, or built the extraordinary is instead applauded for mowing his lawn, fixing a leaky faucet, and attending weekend barbecues. Sparks of greatness are traded for ashes of compliance, leaving only the shadow of what could have been. This is not cynicism, it is historical pattern. The greatest works of male genius often come from those who resisted the yoke of domesticity. Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Beethoven, Kierkegaard, all men who refused to be swallowed by the marital machine. Meanwhile, countless others, whose names we will never know, were buried under conjugal duty. Their potential dissolved quietly in the acid of routine life. Kafka's struggle was not merely personal neurosis, it was prophetic vision. He saw marriage not as companionship but as colonization, where the sovereignty of a man's inner world is annexed by the banal empire of family life. The bureaucratic absurdity Kafka wrote about in The Trial and the Castle was not only about governments or courts, it was a mirror of marriage itself, suffocating, irrational demands that erode the soul. Hey buddy, you've watched to this point. We believe you find value from this video. Do well to subscribe and hit the bell button for more psychology and philosophy videos like this. Now let's continue our video. Think carefully. When a man marries, his time is no longer his. His silence, which once gave birth to ideas, is shattered by the ceaseless noise of obligation. His solitude, which once nurtured insight, is confiscated by the tyranny of togetherness. Even his body is not his own, but enlisted into service, working, providing, maintaining, until nothing remains but fatigue, disillusion, and resignation. And yet this system is praised, protected, and perpetuated. Why? Because marriage is the perfect siphon. It converts a man striving for transcendence into predictable labor. It tames him, it domesticates him. A wild mind is dangerous to society, but a married man is safe, stable, and contained. His revolutionary fire is redirected into consumerism, mortgages, and the dull perpetuation of the status quo around him. Look at the language we use in settling down. What does that phrase really mean? It means lowering, diminishing, compressing. The man who once soared must now crawl. The man who once questioned everything must now answer to grocery lists and in-laws. The man who once burned with vision must now dim his light, so that others may feel comfortable in the faint glow of his compromised existence. Marriage, then, is not about love, it is about control. It is the most elegant prison ever built, where the bars are invisible and the chains are disguised as commitment. The inmate even thanks his captors, celebrates his incarceration, and teaches his sons to repeat the same fate. This is not union. It is indoctrination, a ritual sacrifice of the exceptional on the altar of the ordinary masses. Kafka resisted because he knew. He saw that once you step into that cage, the key is thrown away. And the tragedy is not just personal, it is civilizational. How many revolutions, masterpieces, discoveries, and truths have died in the cradle of marriage? How much human advancement has been stalled, slowed, or suffocated because the best minds were shackled to the slow grind of domestic survival? This is the darkest truth about marriage. It is not that it fails men, but that it succeeds too well. It was never meant to nurture genius, but to neutralize it. It was never meant to unleash a man's potential, but to bury it under the suffocating weight of duty. Marriage does not kill love, it kills greatness. And it does so with a smile, a ring, and the applause of society that calls it virtue. This is a story of quiet annihilation. The man who once burned with potential now feels only a dull ache of what might have been. His ambitions, once limitless, are gradually replaced by mundane tasks. The home becomes both cradle and prison, a place where every request, every expectation, and every compromise siphons his creative energy, leaving behind the shell of compliance instead of the spark of genius. The historical precedent is stark. Throughout time, societies have recognized the danger of unfettered male potential. Shamans, mystics, and pioneers were often required to live apart, celibate, or in isolation, preserving their energy for creation rather than family. Modern marriage, however, is the civilized method of forcing that same choice upon every man, ensuring his energy is consumed in safe, predictable, domesticated channels. Kafka's own engagement letters demonstrate this. He documented his inability to fulfill the role of husband, confessing that his inner life, his obsessions, his morbid imagination, made him incompatible with domestic expectations. Every letter was a deposition in his own trial, a meticulous accounting of flaws, a surrender to a system he could not escape, revealing the brutal truth. Marriage demands the suppression of the self. Consider Thomas, the modern entrepreneur. His company was his life, chaos fueling creation. Marriage introduced a subtle bureaucratic drain. Late nights criticized, instability condemned, ambitions rerouted into safer, duller pursuits. Step-by-step compromise replaces instinct, conformity replaces brilliance. Over a decade, his creative fire is replaced by managerial competence. The bureaucracy wins without conflict, slowly converting the wild into the manageable. Psychology confirms this process. Emotionally burdensome communication forces a man to expend cognitive resources, managing emotional climates, hijacking the prefrontal cortex, reducing capacity for deep, creative work. Every ambiguous message, every side "I'm fine," every unspoken expectation is another form to file, another corridor to walk, slowly draining mental energy once reserved for conquest, creation, and greatness. The system's enforcement is subtle yet absolute. The harrow of domesticity does not physically harm, but inscribes its law into the man's psyche. Each compromise, each emotional concession, each sacrifice writes obedience across his consciousness. The apparatus operates instinctively, using biology and psychology to ensure compliance. The man's desire to provide and protect is weaponized against his potential, converting instinct into chains. Look again at the phrase "happily married." The happiness is assumed, the obedience unspoken. Society applauds not because the man thrives, but because he conforms. His rebellion is neutralized, his ambition softened. A once dangerous figure is pacified by ritual, paperwork, and ceremony. What was once limitless potential is translated into predictable cycles, safe for society, safe for family, but fatal for genius. The tragedy is not loud. There is no dramatic collapse, no spectacular defeat. Instead, it is a slow erosion, an invisible corrosion of spirit. The man becomes less himself each day, until finally there is nothing left of his former brilliance. He is applauded for maturity, rewarded for stability, praised for reliability. But none notice that in achieving these virtues, he has been emptied of the extraordinary. Marriage is civilization's most efficient machine. It takes the unpredictable and makes it manageable, the wild and makes it tame, the visionary and makes him ordinary. Its success is measured not in love but in compliance. The very structure of society depends on this machinery. Governments, economies, and institutions thrive on men's predictability. Marriage is the mechanism that guarantees this predictability at scale. Even religion weaponizes the same design. Marriage is sanctified, elevated as holy, not for the sake of love, but to legitimize the transfer of male energy into socially approved service. Priests, monks, and mystics are exceptions because their energy is redirected into spiritual bureaucracy instead. The common man is not granted that exception. His fate is sealed, his fire bound to mortgage, family, and repetitive routine. And yet a disturbing paradox emerges. The very few who resist marriage are often vilified, treated as incomplete, immature, or selfish. They are shamed into submission or exiled into loneliness. But it is precisely these men, Kafka, Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, who preserved the solitude necessary for genius. Their isolation was not weakness. It was their rebellion, their refusal to surrender their mind to the quiet bureaucracy of family life. The silent war continues today. Modern men are told marriage will fulfill them, stabilize them, make them whole. In reality, it amputates parts of their being, removes risk, and replaces vision with predictability. The very traits that once made them magnetic, ambition, fire, danger, are blunted. What remains is a dependable, softened man, useful for institutions, safe for society, and entirely robbed of his revolutionary potential. This is why Kafka called marriage the impossibility of writing. He saw that creation requires silence, solitude, obsession. Marriage annihilates these conditions. The writer becomes a husband, the thinker becomes a provider, the dreamer becomes a maintenance worker of life. The mind that once challenged reality is occupied with trivialities, while the world applauds his compliance as though it were virtue or maturity. The truth is brutal. Marriage does not elevate a man, it dilutes him. It does not make him whole, it fragments him. Each day becomes another trade, time for approval, freedom for acceptance, fire for stability. And the worst part? He agrees to it willingly, convinced he is fulfilling destiny. The cage is not forced upon him. He walks into it smiling, unaware that he is locking away his greatness forever. The erosion is not sudden. At first, he believes he can balance both, the fire of his genius and the duties of his household. But soon the scales tip. The late nights of obsession are replaced by early mornings of responsibility. The manuscripts remain unfinished, the projects half-built, the visions abandoned. Each compromise feels small, but together they form a tide that drowns the man he once was. The deception lies in society's applause. Friends, family, and neighbors will praise the married man as stable, responsible, mature. They will never ask about the unfinished book, the abandoned painting, the invention that never left his garage. Those are forgotten. What matters is that he plays his role well, performs his duties, and never disrupts the flow of the ordinary. He becomes a model citizen precisely because he has stopped being exceptional. This is why the wild mind is so dangerous. Left untamed, it might question institutions, invent alternatives, or create beauty that disrupts the order of things. Marriage intercepts that fire early, ensuring it burns only in acceptable places. It is not destruction, it is redirection. And that is why it succeeds. The man still works, still strives, but his striving is safe, predictable, and easily consumed by the system around him. Even language betrays the truth. The phrase "tied the knot" is more revealing than intended. A knot restrains, it binds. It limits freedom of movement. The married man is celebrated precisely because he has been tied. What appears as connection is, in truth, containment. What appears as unity is, in reality, loss of individuality. Every metaphor of marriage hides within it the image of captivity disguised as virtue. Kafka's refusal was not cowardice, it was rebellion. He saw too clearly the exchange being demanded. Genius for domesticity, freedom for approval, fire for safety. He chose solitude, and for that, the world inherited his prophetic works. His stories of bureaucratic absurdity are not distant allegories. They are lived experiences, premonitions of what marriage does, creating endless corridors of trivial demands that lead nowhere. The modern world continues this quiet erasure. The artist becomes a weekend hobbyist. The philosopher becomes a tired father explaining homework. The builder becomes a man mowing his lawn. Greatness is never stolen all at once. It is drained slowly, disguised as responsibility, normalized as maturity, and in the end the man accepts it, because everyone around him assures him that this is success. But history tells another story. The men who resisted, the ones who stayed outside the cage, became voices that shaped civilization. They were not tamed, not neutralized. Their solitude preserved their fire. Their vision remained unbroken. Society may have mocked them, called them eccentric, incomplete, or unfit for family life. Yet it is their names we remember, their works we study, their ideas that survived centuries. Marriage is not the death of love, it is the burial of potential. The system thrives on disguising obedience as romance, responsibility as virtue, compromise as fulfillment. But beneath the celebration lies a darker truth. It was never about happiness. It was always about containment. It was always about siphoning male energy into stable, predictable channels, ensuring the survival of the system, even at the cost of the man himself. The most terrifying part is that men embrace their own captivity. They place the ring on their finger, smile in photographs, and celebrate the very ritual that marks the end of their sovereignty. The applause of society blinds them to the loss. They believe they are gaining love, security, and respect. not realizing they are trading away silence, solitude, and the chance to leave behind something truly timeless. A man without marriage still faces struggle, but it is a struggle directed inward, toward mastery and creation. His fire may consume him, but at least it burns brightly. A married man faces a different struggle, endless external demands that deplete without nourishing. His fire never ignites fully. It flickers, it sputters, it is smothered beneath layers of triviality. What remains is not creation but consumption. The civilizational cost is immeasurable. How many books unwritten? How many discoveries delayed? How many revolutions silenced before they began? The world celebrates stability but does not mourn the genius it loses. We cannot count the invisible monuments that never rose, the invisible symphonies never heard, the invisible truths never spoken. Each was buried quietly in the slow grind of conjugal duty. Kafka's life is a warning but also a gift. By resisting, he preserved his vision and we inherited his reflections. He turned his fear of marriage into art, his dread into prophecy. He showed us through allegory what it means to be trapped in systems that consume the individual. Marriage is not merely a personal choice. It is a mechanism of civilization, one that trades brilliance for predictability. The machine continues, disguised as love, celebrated as virtue, enforced as tradition. Few question it, fewer resist it, and those who do are often shamed into silence. But the truth remains. Marriage is not a sanctuary for genius, it is its graveyard. It does not cultivate greatness, it domesticates it. It does not liberate, it binds. It does not elevate, it erodes. It is the most efficient siphon ever created. So ask yourself, what is the cost of compliance? What potential do you bury beneath the rituals of maturity? What fire do you extinguish in the name of stability? The answer is not just personal, it is universal. Each man who surrenders his genius to marriage robs the world of something extraordinary. The price of his comfort is the death of his possibility, the erasure of a future only he could have built. This is the darkest truth. Marriage succeeds by erasing without spectacle, destroying without violence, killing without blood. It smiles as it binds, applauds as it imprisons, celebrates as it annihilates. And the man, convinced he has chosen freely, thanks the very system that has buried him alive. The tragedy is not that he is forced, it is that he believes he has won. That belief is the final chain.